someone's
on live now. So this is to turn it around.
Yeah, it says mirror camera. It says mirror. Hit the mirror. There you go. So that whenever they see it, they'll be able to see it.
All right, guys. Hello. We had a 60-second delay, but we are here on live. Welcome to Coach My Love Thursday class. I am Shavon Ballard, relationship marriage coach. I am also a domestic violence survivor and advocate. I'm also the happy wife of Pastor Michael Ballard and the blessed mother of two amazing boys, Jalen, who is 13 years old. I can't believe I have a teenager. I'm not old. He's just growing up. And I also have a beautiful bouncing baby boy named Cameron, who will be 16 months old tomorrow. So glory to God Almighty. So let's get into it. Tonight's class is going to be all about identifying domestic violence beyond the physical abuse. The fact that abuse is bigger than a black eye. So a little bit about my story. When I was 15 years old, I met my abuser in high school, and it didn't obviously start as physical abuse. It was more emotional abuse and those type of behaviors initially in the relationship. In the beginning of the relationship, he was like the perfect guy. I'm talking Romeo, Juliet, and everything that Disney movies tells you is supposed to be. 15, I was really young, really naive, had no idea about the world, had no concept of abuse or even purposes of relationships or God's calling or purpose on my life. So I'm just out here in the world, doodly-doo. Skip forward a few years and the verbal abuse intensifies. It goes from name calling to like just taking an inch and running a mile with it, and it was really a grooming process. Fast forward 5 years later, multiple breakups and makeups, getting back together off and on. 20 years old at this point. Now, at this stage, I'm 20 years old. Then the physical assault began. And when it first happened, I remember it very vividly. We were at one of his family, his cousin was having a get together. And all the family, everybody was drinking. He was extremely drunk. And when he had attacked me, I think I was just and I think I was drinking that night too, but it just caught me so off guard. And I had a hard time processing what even happened. I just remember being really upset and in denial, like, how did this happen? What did I do? What could I have done better? So we didn't talk for about a week. He showed up at my apartment. I'm so sorry, I'll never do it again. I don't know what got into me. Fast forward a year, I'm pregnant, 21 years old. Now it's like, okay, during the pregnancy, there was no physical abuse. There were other forms of abuse, but unbeknownst to me, it would later escalate. So we continued this cycle off and on, making up and breaking up for years and years. 26 years old, he proposes to me. We get married, trying to build a family, trying to create this American dream of what I thought a marriage and a family was supposed to look like. By that age of 28, I was filing for divorce. The marriage was tumultuous, it was horribly abusive and life-threatening for me. I experienced extreme depression, extreme anxiety, isolation, and physical assaults. And it was really getting to a dangerous point to where my life was on the line. And it was beginning, if it hadn't already, to affect our son, Jalen. And that was just not the environment I wanted my son to grow up in, right? I say all this to say, I have never in my life ever had a black eye. Of all the years that I was abused by this gentleman, being pulled through windows, hair torn out, punched in the head, the worst of the worst things, and we have this misconception and the idea of what abuse looks like. when we look at movies, we know that this is abuse. A black eye is a clear indication of abuse. But what about those underlying forms of abuse that's not often discussed or explored? And that's what we're going to delve into with these classes. Abuse is bigger than a black eye. Okay, come on in, guys. Come on in. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining. If you have any questions or anything you'd like to add to the conversation, I totally encourage you. The more we engage in this, the more of a healing experience that this can be for all of us. So over the next few classes, we're going to be discussing 8 major topics. The first is, what is abuse? It's such a word that's just so thrown around in so many different ways and so downplayed in other ways. So we're going to get into what abuse really is and what it means in the different forms of what it looks like and how it shows up. How is abuse bigger than a black eye? What are the many forms of abuse and how it can affect your life? We'll also be discussing in the second class common myths about abuse. Like I said, everybody's got their perception, and everything is relative, even in different cultures. Beating your woman in some cultures is not considered abusive. It's considered normal and acceptable behavior culturally. So we will be discussing common myths, debunking those myths. That will be in class number 2. In our third class, week 3, we'll be discussing, is it my fault? I went through that really bad when I was going through abuse in my relationship with my ex-husband. Like, I really thought that a lot of it was something I was triggering in him or provoking in him. And that was an entire journey that God had to take me through to remove some things out of me that may have, surprisingly, contributed to the fact that abuse was taking place within our relationship. And that was one of the hardest things in my healing journey to identify, is what role did I play in that situation. In week 4, we'll be discussing common mistakes that people make when they are in abusive relationships, and how to leave and what to do, and mistakes when you're in these relationships that can cost you way more than absolutely necessary. In week 5, we will be discussing overcoming hurdles. The hurdles when you're at a place of having enough. When you've gotten to that place of, I don't deserve to be treated this way. God has so much more and so much better for me. How do I overcome the hurdles in getting out of the situation I've gotten into? I like to compare being in that type of abusive relationship is, it's almost like being in quicksand, right? I don't know how many of you on here have ever actually been caught in quicksand, but you've seen it in the movies where, you step on it and, oh no, you're slowly sinking, ankles, knees, next thing you know, it's just a chin. That's how it is. And you know what? The harder you struggle to get out, the deeper you sink. Overcoming those hurdles. We'll be discussing that in week 5. Hi there, Robinson, Candy Robinson. You're a martial arts instructor. You helped the young lady out a while back that was beat on. Ooh, that's so terrible. I'm so sorry to hear that, but God bless you for being able to teach her those things. It's an incredible skill set to have. I admire you. I admire the art of martial arts. It's amazing. I actually took some martial arts classes myself after my divorce. It was with Sensei Brooks, Verlin Brooks in Chicago. I don't know if you're familiar with him or not, but he is a 10th degree black belt. And he taught me so many martial arts techniques and just really teaching me how my body was actually a weapon. And with the right techniques and knowing how to, I, a petite woman, could body slam a full grown man. And I actually have in the class. It was so cool. I totally respect and love the arts of martial arts. So keep it up. It's amazing. It helps so many people, so many women. Thank you, James. Thanks for stopping by. Hi, everybody. Come on in. Come on in. Everybody's welcome. So we're just going over basically the syllabus of what we'll be discussing in our class. Abuse is bigger than a black eye. Week 6, we'll be discussing safety plans, how to create a safety plan, why do you need a safety plan, and helping you to understand that it doesn't make you a bad person and it's not doing too much to have a safety plan. If you're dealing with someone who's putting your safety on the line and in jeopardy, you have to take precautions to make sure that you are safe, because it's better to anticipate the unexpected than to be caught off guard in a situation and you're not protected. You know what I'm saying? So week 7 is going to be the great escape. The great escape is execution. How do you follow through? And I think that this is really where a lot of us get stuck. A lot of people in these unhealthy relationships who are trying to get out, they get stuck with the follow through, the execution. Even if you're at your breaking point, the follow through. And once you've made it out, how to continue moving forward. Because it usually gets harder at that point. But I'm going to give you guys some tools and some tips and information from my personal experience and research on how you can leave the situation once and for all. They say statistically it takes about 7 to 8 attempts of leaving an abusive relationship before you're actually successful in doing so. That is something I can personally attest to. And I'm not saying that it was 7 to 8 breakups within a year. I'm talking 7 to 8 breakups over the course of 12 years. And it took that long. And the journey that God took me through and the things that I learned about myself and over the years, how I was able to erect myself out of that situation into a better, healthier place. And we're going to discuss that. Chapter 8 is going to be week 8, rebuilding your life. Again, this is the part that a lot of people, men and women, because both men and women can be in these types of narcissistic, abusive relationships. What's next? All right, I made it out. What's next? You don't know what's next. We'll be discussing how to plan your future and plan your next move so you don't get caught up in the quicksand of the repetition of the crazy cycle with a narcissistic abuser. Here to support you. So let's go into it. Chapter 1, what is abuse? If you ask the average person on the street, what is an abusive relationship? What do they usually say? For you in the audience, you guys in the group right now, I want you all to drop an answer. What is your idea of an abusive relationship? Either give me a definition or give me an example of what you think an abusive relationship is. Does anybody have the answer? Drop your comments, guys. All right, what is an abusive relationship? I want you guys to tell me, what is an abusive relationship? Either what you've personally experienced, what you've researched, even what you've seen on TV and movies. Our experience and our understanding of our reality basically is shaped by our experience. So based on your experience and understanding, what is an abusive relationship? Once we know how to define what that thing is, what an abusive relationship is, then we can begin to dissect it and peel the layers back to expose what it is. And once we're able to see it in its rawest form, then from there we can assess and move forward from it. So an abusive relationship. Right, more than likely, if you ask somebody what is an abusive relationship, the chances are that they will give you a description of a physical abusive relationship. It's easy to spot. He hit her, she hit him, physical abuse. But there are other forms of abusive relationships. I'm not downplaying it because it is absolutely a form of abusive relationship, but abuse comes in many many forms. So let's break it down. Abuse. Abuse is spelled A-B-U-S-E. Abuse. The root word ab means from and away from, away, off, ab. Use defined means to behave towards, act, or with regard. So the fundamental definition of abuse is to treat a person with no regard, with cruelty, violence, especially regularly and repeatedly. Now, I've heard arguments of people say in one-time incidents where someone flew off the handle and hit someone that, this is not considered domestic abuse. It actually is considered domestic abuse, even if it happens one time. Domestic is within the home. Abuse is maltreatment or violence or misuse. So if it's happening in the home, even if it happens one time, that is classified as domestic abuse. Now, abuse can be controlled through intimidation and threats. For example, I'll punch you in the face if you do that again, or if you, check my phone or do something I don't like, there will be consequences. It's a good thing to have consequences, within a healthy relationship, but when it threatens your health, safety, and well-being, that's an entirely different thing. It could also include control over finances, emotional manipulation, even spiritual manipulation. There have been many cases of, unfortunately, within the church where an abuser may use the Bible as a form or a tool to be weaponized against the person that they're manipulating and being abusive towards. For example, in my personal experience with my ex-husband, we would have situations where he would beat me and then be upset with me for being upset about the beating after the fact. So his rebuttal was often, if Jesus can forgive me, why can't you? Totally and completely out of order. But in the whirlwind and the stress mindset, how can you even process what's wrong or right? You just want to do the right thing as a believer. And that was absolutely the wrong thing and so demonic on so many levels. But there are many levels of spiritual abuse that can happen. We also have verbal abuse. That's the yelling, the screaming, the cursing out, the disrespecting. It's just ugly. And we also have, I don't want to get flagged, but the SEXUAL abuse, which kind of goes without saying. We know what that means. So it does not even have to be violent act of SEXUAL abuse. But if you are even coerced into doing things that you don't want to do through threats or intimidation, that is abuse. God's intent for your life is to thrive in your purpose. He wants to be glorified through you to other people. If you're his child and fearfully made creation who deserves to be loved, protected, trusted, and treated with respect, but maybe your partner does not treat you this way. They may make you feel ashamed of yourself, using your past traumas against you. There's nothing worse in an intimate relationship when you're vulnerable, as you should be, with your partner, and they weaponize your past traumas or worse fears against you. That's the absolute worst thing you could do, and one of the quickest ways to break down trust within a relationship. They may put you down or even threaten to hurt you or someone that you love. That is intimidation. That is a form of abuse. They may threaten to leave you if you voiced your opinions and feelings about the abuse, or if you don't do what they say to do or what they want. Now, the different forms of abuse often overlap. Physical is so easy to define. A push, a shove, a hair pull, a bump. Those are all physical. Anything physical contact, violent and aggressive is abuse, physical abuse. Okay. Let's talk about the other forms of abuse and how they can overlap. I want you guys to kind of envision, like, those pie circles you used to do back in school a long time ago. You may remember those pie charts. There'd be one in the middle, one off to the side, one off to the other side, and in certain sections they will overlap like so. That can happen and often happens in abusive relationships. So again, we have financial abuse, we have sexual abuse, physical abuse, verbal abuse, emotional abuse, spiritual abuse, my favorite, narcissistic abuse, which is an entirely different category within itself, but we will discuss. And also using technology to stalk someone is a form of abuse. It's like virtual abuse, like digital abuse. Has anyone in here ever encountered someone, even if it's not an intimate relationship, where they may have created fake accounts to stalk you or to check up on you to see what you're doing, creating fake accounts, creating fake interactions and encounters with you to get information from you or to find out what's going on in your life? That's not right. That's a form of using technology to abuse. Even these cyber bullies that we hear so much about, that's a form of abuse. They don't even have to know you in real life to just be nasty and hateful for no reason at all. It's really real. It's really real. All right, guys. Now, because there are so many different forms of abuse, most categories don't come with black eyes or bruises. Okay, so it can be really difficult to recognize abuse in your own relationships or even the relationships with people that you love or care for if there's no physical abuse. A lot of times we know what it feels like, but it can be hard to put a name to it, to identify it, because we know what it feels like, but it's hard sometimes when you don't have something tangible, like this is the thing, this is what it is. That's easy to see, that's easy to report, that holds more weight in, let's say, the legal system. But if it's a feeling of being hurt or feeling some type of way, it's a lot more difficult sometimes to identify. Now, there are some major red flags that we will discuss that is a part of abuse within a relationship. They are generally related to negative emotions, such as fear or shame. For example, if you feel like that you're walking on eggshells with your partner, or you have to be so mindful and careful of everything you say and how you say it, that your entire message is completely lost, that is a big red flag, a huge indicator that you may be in an emotionally abusive relationship. You have no safety. You have no safe place to be vulnerable and share your feelings about what's going on or things that you are needing in that relationship. If you are constantly worried that you're going to make them mad or set them off, then that is definitely another indicator that abuse may be present within your relationship. Now, if your partner is jealous, accusatory, and always checking up on you to make sure that you are where you say you're going to be, that could be another sign of abuse. Now, I want to tread lightly on that. And I say that to say, if you're in a relationship that maybe you cheated on them and they're still in a healing process, I'm talking in a healthy, normal relationship. You're in a healthy relationship and one partner cheats on the other. Naturally, as a response, it's going to take some time to rebuild that trust within a relationship. So if you are cheating, you better be prepared to answer every question and over follow up to make sure that you're rebuilding that trust to give your partner that security that you robbed them of. But if you're in a relationship where there's been no cheating, you've been completely straightforward with one another and trustworthy, but they're constantly questioning you, following you, hovering over you, that could definitely be a sign of abuse. It's important to point out that subtle signs of abuse often increase over time, not only increase in frequency, but increase in severity. Like they say in the word, like the devil don't come in red horns and a pointed tail. Like he's gonna come as everything you ever wanted The enemy hears our prayers just like God hears our prayers. So that's why we have to pray in the spirit that God keep us covered and that the enemy has no foothold over our lives when we're speaking to Father, okay? So be mindful when those things come up and those people come up. Go in the spirit. If you meet somebody new that you're feeling, like, give it some time. Let it breathe. Pray about it. Don't be above praying to God about your love life, okay? Because he knows more about you than you know about yourself. And he especially knows everything about that other person. So don't be so thirsty or so overexcited for the sake of having a body next to you or having that companionship. Relationship is a beautiful thing to have. I'm all for it. A happily married woman, I wouldn't have it no other way. But in the world of dating, you just want to be careful because there are some crazy people out there and the rate of mental illness is running rampant. We have to be careful with these people we get involved in tying our lives and our time and our money and our families and our bodies with. Let's be careful. Let's respect ourselves enough, love ourselves enough to slow down. Be friends first. See if you even like this person first. Because it's really easy for our bodies to start firing off all these hormones and these feel-good endorphins of, you know, just the excitement of meeting somebody new who's like maybe into you back. You know, it's a good feeling. It feels good. But slow down enough to game if it's present. Nobody wants to get played. So I'm just telling you all to slow down. Try being friends with this person first. Observe them in different environments, different social environments. Like, that's important. That speaks a lot. Even knowing what type of relationship they have with their mothers. What is that? Hold on. Sorry, guys. Let me turn this off. I don't know what it is. But just being mindful of not just how they are with you, but see how they operate in other environments. It's so important. It tell you a lot. It can really tell you a lot. Yes. So, speaking of the abuse increasing in severity and frequency, somebody who's yelling at you or intimidating you now, could very well easily be hitting you by the next week, and it'll seem to come out of nowhere. But by the time they usually are physically hitting you, they've already broken you down and shattered your self-esteem to a place of you're questioning your own judgment. So when they become physical, I'm not saying everyone, because some people are quicker to respond to leave than others. But for the others who are really emotionally invested and kind of weaker in those areas, it could be harder to leave after, the shell shock of it crossing the threshold of physical violence. Not to say physical violence is worse than any other form of violence, because it's all violence, it's all abusive, it's all bad. And as a matter of fact, dare I say, the scars of emotional abuse take a lot longer to heal than physical ones. Because, baby, when you get to the place of it actually being physical, you are often so emotionally broken down at that point where you don't even really feel it as much. Trust me, speaking from experience. All right, guys, so this is, like we said, called the grooming process, when they're slowly chipping away at you, making you question yourself, gaslighting you, stonewalling you, isolating you, doing all of these things. This is slowly chipping away at you until there's nothing left than a shell of your former self, and you get to the place where you don't even identify yourself anymore. You don't even know what you like anymore because you're so codependent on this toxic relationship, and it's a demonic soul tie at the end of the day. Because the enemy is after your purpose and that greatness that God put inside of you. I heard my husband say once, he says, you know what? Think about a bad neighborhood, right? If there's a burglar in the neighborhood, do you think he'll choose to break into a trap house where there's nothing in it? Or do you think he'll choose to break into the mansion where there's something so valuable in it that he has to get it? That's what you are. You have something valuable in you. And the key is to recognize that and preserve and cherish and protect that as much as possible, because the enemy is after our souls, after our purpose, after our lives and our lineage and our legacy. Have to protect that. So it's so important that your personal boundaries have to be set. Healthy boundaries have to be set. The purpose of boundaries is not to stop the other person from doing something. The purpose of healthy boundaries is for you. It's for you. It's for your protection. Now, there is a difference between having healthy boundaries and having up a wall. Because having up a wall is not healthy either. But let's admit it, every now and then, like we've all maybe experienced putting up walls at some point in our lives, but it's not the best or healthiest way to live. So having those healthy boundaries is like a fence. You think about a fence, you can see through a fence. You can open and close the fence. You can expand the fence or shrink the fence, but it's to protect your yard, right? And to enforce consequences when those boundaries are crossed. Now, some of us may feel like we know how to set boundaries, but we get lost when it comes to, okay, that person either intentionally or unintentionally crossed the boundary. Now, what do? You have to enforce consequences. And does it feel good? No, it don't feel good. And no, it doesn't make you the bad person. It makes you a wonderful person. It makes you such a loving person that you love yourself, to protect yourself, to set healthy boundaries for yourself. Because you know what? You teach what you allow. You teach what you allow. And if you're allowing people to trespass and trample and litter all over your yard because you are putting up a facade of having a healthy boundary, but you have no consequences or repercussions when those boundaries are crossed, that's a problem. And people will see through that and they will try you. So please, for the sake of you, enforce consequences with your healthy boundaries. Now, with an abusive person, they will definitely challenge your boundary at any opportunity until you're inevitably surrender to accept the maltreatment that they're giving you, right? So with them, it may start with something small or as a joke or, to test you and see where you at, see how you respond. And you respond sternly, it may come with I was just playing with you. Like, it was just a joke. Yeah, they say it's a joke, but you know what else they say? In every joke, there's at least 10% of some truth. Don't let them try you, okay? So we're talking about grooming, and abuse is bigger than a black eye. So grooming is when someone builds a relationship, trust, and emotional connection with you so they can manipulate, exploit, and abuse you later. Now, if you all know anything about narcissistic abuse from either the teachings on our Coach My Love page or other people's page, continue to educate yourself at every opportunity because there's a lot of narcissists out here. And what they're really good at is being so charming in the beginning of the relationship. They take on this persona, they call it, I don't want to call it mirroring, but it's almost like they're mirroring you. They're basically asking you questions like, what do you like? And what do you want out of a guy? Or those things to see what basically do I have to do to pretend to be this person for you to have a buy-in to me so I can get what I want out of you. You know what I'm saying? So you have to be really careful with that and giving it time. You want to know the best way to know if someone's a narcissist or not. Like I said, give it some space. See them through sober eyes, not through the eyes of the emotions and hormones flooding through your body every time you see them or they text you or call you. Give it some room. Be their friend. See how they operate in other environments. And time is the biggest teller. Time is the biggest teller. At least if you're giving it time and some space, at least you'll be far enough away where you're not so emotionally invested in them, where it'll be so hard to leave once you really see those red flags coming out. So that's a good tip that I can give you all. So that's with the grooming process. Now, like I said, with the quicksand analogy, once they groom you, if you jump in too deep, too fast, before you realize you're in quicksand, you're going to be up to your hips, struggling to try to get out. And you know what? Even if you knee deep, waist deep, and you're trying to call for help for other people to help you out, it could potentially put them in danger too of falling into quicksand too. So the biggest advocate that we have for ourselves in those situations, besides God, is ourselves. You have to be your number one advocate. You have a right and responsibility to protect yourself And protecting yourself starts with educating yourself. What is abuse? What is narcissistic abuse? What are the forms of abuse? Am I being abused? And if I am, what do I do about it now? Nobody in their right mind goes into a relationship saying, hey, they look like an abuser, or I want to be abused, or I'm that type of girl, I'm that type of guy. Nobody in their right mind goes into a relationship like that. And it makes me sick when people say, oh, well, why don't you just leave? Because they don't understand the level of manipulation, the spiritual components, and especially if you're intimate with this person physically, there are so many layers to it. It's not as easy as it seems. It's definitely a process. It can be done, but it's definitely a process. Sometimes it's really hard to just leave. You have to have a plan. You have to know where you're going to do, where you're going to go. How do you heal? What's next? Everything we talked about in the beginning of this class is so many layers, and we will discuss them all. So without the right tools, it may seem harder to fight to get out of a relationship. And I'm going to give you guys those tools. But like I said, with God, with the right education, with the right support system, there is still hope for you. Definitely. And again, if you recognize the signs of abuse, then it's time to take control of your life. Life is too short. And we're getting older every day we're on this earth. At the end of your life, the only thing you really have is the memories that you created in life. If you're spending 10 years, even 1 year, 1 month with an abuser, those memories are going to be with us for the rest of our lives. In a perfect world, none of us would have bad experiences. But it's those bad experiences that we experience that help grow us, and sometimes even give us to have testimony to help the next person. So don't despise the trials and hard times that you've had in your life, but rather use it as a learning opportunity, because in life, you're not going to lose. The goal is to learn, right? So you guys, again, your first line of defense, you have to be. Education and support goes a long, long way. Always remember that your well-being and safety are number one priority. Now, if you're still unsure about whether or not you are being abused or have been abused, are an abuser, compare your relationship against the best barometer that has ever existed. The Holy Bible. What Jesus says about us, what God's word says about us. And that's where I used to get tripped up, because I knew what the Bible said about me, but I didn't believe it for myself. And on top of that, the manipulation of being so intimately involved with someone who always made me question my value and who I was, even though I knew God's truth and what he said that I was. It was a spiritual fight. It was a spiritual battle within myself. It was like two different worlds colliding. And I had the truth and I had his truth. Which one do you stand on? Feed yourself, overwhelm yourself with the word. Never forget who you are. You know who you are. Your identity is in Christ. Your identity is in God, who he says you are. You are valuable. You are his child. You are an heir to the holiest of holies. Stand your ground. Value yourself. There's something amazing in you. Don't throw it to the dogs. Don't throw it to the streets. We've got this lifestyle and this culture that promotes, living your best life. Is it really your best life? Or you think it's your best life because media says it's your best life? They have their idea of what the best life is, but what does God say your best life is? Get into the word. Understand it for yourself firsthand. Thank the Lord we have pastors and teachers and preachers and so much information, but everybody has their own interpretation of what the word means and certain scriptures mean. Read it for yourself and let the Holy Spirit reveal to you what it means. I even challenge you to go a step further. If you all, I'm sure you do, have a smartphone, download the free Bible app. In the Bible app, you can choose plans for yourself, like Bible study plans. You can even do Bible study plans with friends, like in groups, and keep each other accountable. They have relationship Bible studies. They have Bible studies for fasting and prayer, how to get closer to God, how to have effective, powerful prayer. And you can also select what type of translation you want in the Bible app. I grew up in the King James Version, which was sometimes really difficult for me to understand without a church leader, interpreting for me. But when I want to read the Bible for myself, I turn on my Bible study app, and they have a feature where the Bible will read to you. So I'm a busy woman, right? I'm like, how can I find ways to implement Bible study in my daily life? So every morning when I'm waking up or getting ready for work or whatever I have to do, even doing my makeup, I'm like, I got 15, 20 minutes. Put on that app. I'm driving in the car, turn it on. So I use the New Living Translation, excuse me, which is basically the translation of the Bible that speaks basically in layman terms, modern terms, and terminology that we understand. So that's what I do. That's my routine. When I'm doing my makeup, I set my phone up, turn my Bible study app, and let it read to me. And it's been truly a blessing. And there's nothing like knowing the word firsthand for yourself. I'm telling you, I am 35 years old, and there are some things in the Bible that I just learned that I'm kind of ashamed that I'm just now learning, because I had such a misunderstanding of it, what I thought it meant before. We're not going to get into that, but read the Bible. Read your Bible, draw close to the Lord, and pray. Spend time in his presence, and let him move in your life. Let him move in your life, because he wants only the best for you. Only the best. Our God is the best daddy ever, okay? Anybody on here who has children, you know how much you love your babies. That's what we are to God. We are his children times 1,000, right? You wouldn't want your babies to get hurt or in bad situations. And when we are instructing our children, it comes from a place of love and protection, not of control and abuse. And unfortunately, our God and the word and the church has been misrepresented so terribly in the world that a lot of people have this idea of God that he's just this tyrant that just wants to control us and take our fun away. It's not that. And I'm telling you, the better understanding you have about who our Lord and Savior truly is, and you get into his word, you will really truly understand his love and compassion that he has for us and our reasons for being here. So again, read the Holy Bible. The word says in Proverbs 10:22, the blessing of the Lord maketh rich, and he addeth no sorrow with it. Now that is the King James Version interpretation of Proverbs 10:22. But if you're not sure, if you're in a relationship that God has for you, if it's abusive or for you, compare it against that. Don't get me wrong, don't get it twisted. The healthiest relationship is going to have some disagreements sometimes, right? It's a part of the process. It's a part of the refining process, especially within marriage, that you're going to have conflicts. Conflict is not taking a trophy and throwing it across the room at their head. That is not conflict. That is abuse, and totally unacceptable and totally unloving and totally ungodly. We are two separate human beings with two sets of minds, with two different backgrounds coming together as one. You better believe there are going to be some differences. Now, the goal is to either come to a resolution on how to overcome that difference or agree to disagree and make it as comfortable for one another as possible, if that makes sense, because you won't always agree on everything, and that's totally okay. But the goal is also to not make each other the problem. Make the problem, and remember that you two are a team trying to overcome whatever that problem is, to make and create better unity and harmony within your the culture of your relationship and marriage, right? So remember that if you are miserable and falling apart and finding that the relationship is bringing you depression and sorrow and fear and anxiety, and first, because we sometimes have those moments even in a healthy relationship, it can happen. Mood swings, life, outside factors happen. When you have those moments, pull back a little bit. Take a little pressure off of the relationship to evaluate yourself and get in God's presence. I saw this movie. What is it called? I think it's called not Couples Retreat, Marriage Retreat. I just downloaded this app. It's called PureFlix. So basically, PureFlix is like the Christian version of Netflix. It's just all inspirational TV, movies, comedies, like everything, because God has me on a spiritual journey right now where I'm only consuming content that is of the Lord, that is feeding my soul and helping me grow in Him. So I saw this movie on PureFlix, and it was about these 3 married couples that went on a retreat. They all had different marital problems. I won't give it away in case you want to watch it. But at one point in the movie, one of the wives met with the marriage counselor, and he took a black marker, opened her hand, and drew a triangle. And he said, I want you to look at this over the next couple days. When you figure out what this means, get back to me. So, they're having all these arguments, her and her husband, and they're going to all these classes, and nothing seems to be working. And then towards the end of the movie, she has this aha moment. She's like, that's what this means, this triangle in my hand. What this triangle in my hand means is, this is me, this is you. As long as we are here, we'll never work. But as long as we are drawing closer, she's pointing to the top of the triangle, as long as we're drawing closer to God, both of us, we'll be closer than ever before. And I'm not talking in a codependent, unhealthy way, but in a healthy, godly kingdom way, the way it was designed for us to work in unity. So remember, the blessing of the Lord maketh one rich and hath no sorrow. That is Proverbs 10:22. The scripture is not just talking about riches in the financial aspect, but it also means that the blessing of the Lord will produce new life and peace and protection and abundance in your life. Who doesn't want that? But first of all, let's get to the bottom of it to know that you even deserve it. You have to be comfortable knowing that you deserve it. I don't care what nobody else told you from your past or what your mom and daddy probably made you feel or what the kids bullied you. Whatever experiences you may have had, the devil is a lie. This is what you deserve, and this is your inheritance, that you should have new life, peace, protection, and abundance in your life. It is your right, okay? And this is the type of wealth that money can't buy. Absolutely, yes. It is a beautiful thing when it works. That's right, Max. Blessings to you too, Ronnie Collier. All right, guys, you have been amazing. So this wraps up our first class. Coach Shavon. Today's chapter was What is Abuse? This is the chapter from my book, Abuse is Bigger Than a Black Eye. It's available on Amazon by Shavon Ballard. If you'd like to download your own copy, it is free. If you download through the Kindle Unlimited, if you have that program. Otherwise, it's just $9.99 to buy it right out. So thank you, guys. We're going to wrap it up. I appreciate you all for coming in tonight and allowing me to pour into you and bless you. I feel like I have so much love to give and so much I want to help everyone with and just pour back into the world what has been poured into me. So thank you for allowing me an opportunity to do that and be that for you. I pray that the Lord covers you every day of your life. I pray that you all have a safe weekend and take to heart the seeds that were planted tonight and take it seriously. Life is so short and God has so much more for you in store than what you're limiting yourself to. I am here for you. Me and Coach Michael are here for you guys. If you are a married couple or in a serious relationship in need of relationship coaching, reach out to us. Shoot us an email, coachmylove@coachmylove.com. Or to make it easier, just shoot us a DM in our TikTok messenger. We'll be happy to set something up for you guys if you just need somebody to talk to or a mediator or just a second set of ears, or if you even just are questioning your relationship. Even if you show up alone, it's okay. We have counseled and coached many people who just showed up by themselves because sometimes a relationship can be so where like the other person may not even be willing to show up with you, but don't doubt the help that it can give you, the healing, the revelation that it can give you if you just seek for yourself first. So That's all I got for you guys tonight. It's been a pleasure. Again, my name is Coach Shavon Valor with Coach My Love. I love you all. Have a blessed evening, and we will see you next time. Good night.